Please welcome Managing Director EMEA for Intrepid Travel, Zina Bencheikh, Chief Operating Officer of Kerten Hospitality, Christian Muhr, and Global Head of Travel Partnerships EMEA for Google, David Robles, in conversation with Skift Editor-in-Chief, Sarah Kopit.
Hello, everybody. Great to see you after lunch. Thank you all for coming and being with us today. This is our sustainability panel, and this is kind of it's a difficult subject sometimes because it's a difficult topic with not a ton of answers. But I would like to ask each one of you each have your own unique place in the travel sector. What is the biggest challenge you all are facing in the sustainability environment right now? Something concrete that you can, share with the audience. Why don't we start with you?
Sure. There's many of them, obviously, and I think if I were to pick one, it's definitely operationally how it's affecting us as a tour operator, as an adventure specialist. We take people all around the world. We are in the front seat of climate change and its effect. And effectively, we, since this summer in particular, are now managing the concrete operational effect of climate change. So from floods, in India or heat waves in Europe, we actually do have to reroute trips. We do have to deal with incidents on the ground, which are the results of climate change. So it is really impacting our business, and it's now in our kind of at the board level incident kind of audit and audit committees as one of the recurrent points, which we are quite concerned about.
Yeah, inflection point. Really, I felt it this last summer as well. What about at Google?
I think, again, there are many, but I think for us is about changing the user behavior, customer behaviors, because it's something that takes time. And through our efforts, trying to show them more sustainable options, more sustainable choices, and seeing them shifting and taking those options is for us the biggest challenge and where we're spending most of the time. It's an opportunity, and we see the progress, but we know it's going to take time, and we have to be persistent in our mission.
And at Kerten?
Yeah, at Kerten, in our industry, we all face the same challenges of having this constant pressure to reduce carbon footprint. So, and that applies on many levels. So it is important, and maybe the single most biggest challenge, to get everybody on the same page. From all stakeholders, as a matter of fact, not only within the company, but also externally. So to constantly make sure that everyone who is part of the business is on the same page and thinking alike in terms of ESG, the way we would like to see it and the way we would like to progress it.
So this one's for David. I'd like to talk a little bit about about Google's travel impact model. Can you tell us a little bit about how it works, how it associates with other third parties, and how consumers can use that data to help them really think about their travels and being more climate friendly?
Thank you. Just to put in context, the travel impact model is a model developed by Google to estimate the CO2 emissions per flight per passenger, and is designed to be constantly evolving and update with the latest science. This model, we made it free and available for everyone to use, and we're very happy that other partners in the industry like Booking.com, Expedia, Trip.com, Skyscanner, and GDSs are using it. And the reason we made it available and open is because we feel that consistency in the sustainability is very, very important. Planning a trip is already complicated per se, and it's stressful, and there is so many decisions, so many data, it takes months. So sustainability shouldn't be another layer of complexity, and it's important that the users see the same numbers across different platforms, and for them it's much easier to understand.
I'm kind of curious from the audience, most of us are here because we work in the travel sector. How many of your companies use those numbers in order to kind of incentivize your employees on how to travel to reduce carbon footprint? We've got some work to do, folks.
Travelimpactmodel.com org. The API and everything is free and accessible for everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you asked me very quickly how we use it, and we display the CO2 impact of each flight in our product.
Yeah. So we were talking in the green room about how if consumers are willing to pay an additional fee to have a sustainable experience. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what Intrepid has done to show the customer how much it actually costs them to have a more sustainable experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is a misconception that sustainability in travel needs to cost money. And we're kind of we offer a very good value for money product. And the main reason why people book on Intrepid tours, it's because of that, because of the destination, the experiences that they want to try. What we've done back in 2010, so we are carbon neutral as a tour operator for a long time, before it was a thing, and before it was a buzzword, because we became conscious of our carbon footprint very, very early on. It was driven by, at the board level by our co-founders. And as part of this project, for 5 years, from 2005 to 2010, we measured our impact, reduced, implemented a lot of different things on our trips to really reduce our impact. And then what was left was offset. And that's how we effectively became carbon neutral. And then we advertised the price or the cost of these offsets into our trips, which were in fact embedded. And for most of our trips, it was less than $1 a day. And so in fact, customers would book our trips not for this reason, but they will feel often very good and surprised that the cost of offsetting wasn't very expensive. I know it's changed a lot. It's much more expensive now, and it shows the need for decarbonization. And it is the only way to go. It's not longer enough to be carbon neutral, but at that time already it was a really good test to understand how customers will actually react to this.
Christian, do you think your customers would pay more?
Well, we are a fairly new company at Kerten Hospitality, so ESG has been historically part of our DNA. So we are not thinking twice about it. We have it in us. And consequently, we developing the brands accordingly. So ESG for us is not a business model. We are not looking at that. It's more the way we operate and the way we live on a daily basis. So, and we've taken it to such a level that we have created our own brand for ESG, which we call UBU, United Building a Better Universe. And that's how we model it out, and that's how we operate. So we wanted to have a framework which is easily to be understood by everybody internally and externally, and then to work along those guidelines. So we are not thinking in a way of this becoming a business model, because we believe if you implement ESG guidelines correctly, you will have a financial benefit, and all of us, as a matter of fact. So no surcharges or whatsoever, no hidden charges.
Yeah. What about at Google? I know that it's a different sort of thing because your customers are.
I think our story is different. We're a tech company, and we use technology to enable users make more sustainable choices. I think what the research shows, and we know there is a gap between what people say and what people do, and we can talk about that. But the research says that people are willing to pay more, and especially the younger generations are much more strongly in that position.
Do you have any problem getting corporate executives, this is for Google, to agree on some of the more kind of cross-industry initiatives that Google does with climate? Is it difficult to get the various sectors of business on the same page to make these kind of broad models and data sets?
I think no. We see, the alliances moving forward is of course taking time, but you can see for the latest announcements how we are, partnering with many industry bodies to find that alignment. The goal for all of us is the same, is sustainability and make progress on that sense. So I think it's just a question of the time it takes, but the goal and the incentives are the same for everyone.
What about, this is for Christian, what do you think about this concept that luxury and kind of opulence and hospitality and ESG is a bit of a paradox. It's kind of a, you can't really do one and the other, not really. You can say it, but.
Well, I think luxury can be and is defined today in different ways, right?
Yeah.
It can be glitz and glamour and gold and I don't know what, but it can equally be toned down to a complete different experience. So again, for us as a company, we look at the experience which one can make, and a more urban experience can be a wonderful luxury experience at the end of the day if it's put together in a nice way and in a potentially carbon neutral way. So luxury doesn't have to be defined by diamonds and gold and silver, for that matter. It can be defined by tranquility. It can be defined what you do within the community and how you engage them. So I think there's a different way of looking at luxury today than maybe 10 years ago.
And do you think that what are some of the trips that you have? You spoke a little bit about how your travel plans have had to change, your trips have had to change because of climate change. Wondering if you could give me some more examples of what you're having to do kind of logistically on the ground, working with various other groups in the travel space to accommodate for these disruptions, I suppose.
Well, I guess there is the short-term initiatives that are very reactive based on what can happen on the ground if there is a climate-related disaster. But what we're proactively working on is to kind of use these trends to adapt our seasonality. For example, we remove departures in some of the southern European destinations over summer to extend the season toward the shoulder season and have more departures up to November. In fact, we ran our first trip to Spain in December last year, and we had the highest engagement score from customer perspective. So it works pretty well. It was much less hot and much more enjoyable in a way. We also are tapping into destinations that are less, in a way, impacted. For example, Northern Europe is doing really, really well and increasing our presence in Scandinavia as an example. Reactively, we are very well versed with incident management. It's been, it's kind of core to what we do as a tour operator. And I can tell you when we had the earthquake in Morocco in September, which to some extent, as scientists would say, is a result of those changes that are happening to the earth. Same with Turkey. We never had as many incidents to this level. We had to deal with 650 customers on the ground, with the majority of them being in rural areas, and had to actually evacuate them and support this evacuation process in a very difficult condition. So when I was saying it's impacting us and it's a challenge, it is really impacting us. And I think it's not necessarily seen in other part of the industry as much as we see it. We see the impact on people's livelihood, rural areas, people who depend on tourism that are seeing their livelihood being affected firsthand. And that's why we're very, very conscious and very active in doing whatever we can do to really reduce our impact as we go.
One of the things that has been consistent across many of the conferences and talks that we've done here at Skift is artificial intelligence. This is a new thing, ChatGPT, artificial intelligence isn't new, but generative AI and the real leaps that we've had in the last year, that is. So I'm curious if any of you at your corporations are using AI to help either not necessarily fight climate change, but help deal with some of these factors that are making things harder. Is it a way that can provide solutions that you found?
That's a very interesting question. We are definitely looking into AI, but not from that perspective, okay. To be honest. We're looking into it from a kind of customer backend, making things a bit more efficient for our kind of sales and customer experiences. But I can tell you from an operational perspective, we're not high end, but we're very high touch. What we do is we're really connected. We create a lot of, our business is based on the fact that we have to create ties with local communities in very remote rural areas where internet, electricity is sometimes not available. So I'm not sure AI will get into that level anytime soon, and we're not necessarily looking into it from that perspective.
Yeah. What about at Google?
I think maybe, again, for Google, it's a bit different because artificial intelligence has been part of all our products. since a long time ago. So it's difficult to think of any of our products that is not using artificial intelligence, and it's like affecting all the users in that sense. So
Yeah.
I think it's a bit different for us.
Does Kerten use AI?
Well, we as I said, we are still a very new company, but artificial intelligence will come to all of us, right? It's
Yeah.
not something which you can off-hold or neglect. It will become part of our daily life. Depending on the size of any company, I think you're in different stages. We are probably at the beginning of it, starting to use it in very simple terms, but I'm sure as we grow and as we all develop forward, it will become of our daily life like the web did 20, 30 years ago, right?
David, I'm curious about the travel impact model hasn't been without controversy. When the contrails is, many of you probably know, the kind of icy cloud-like formations that come from the back of the airplane, they were omitted from the travel impact model. Why did that happen? Can you tell everybody about that?
Can you repeat the question? So I didn't.
Why did you remove those from the calculus?
I think we want the model to be consistent and to be accurate, and therefore we felt that we needed to do further research and to be able to put it in the model. So we're still continue with the investigations. We're working with the research community, and as you know, in the advisory committee, there are members from the research academia, there are members from regulators, airlines, and NGOs, and that's why we want to keep validating the model, and in the future it will be included.
Do you find that it's difficult having so many industry participants on the advisory committee for the model? Do you think that there's a conflict there at all?
I think it's quite the contrary. All the perspectives are very important. It's very important to have regulators that can help us keep the model up to date with policy developments. It's important to have the airline industry because they have first-hand knowledge of the flight's operations, and their point of view and their perspective is very valued, and so on and so forth. So I think we benefit from having a very balanced advisory committee that can ensure that the model is future-proof and can be, our mission, our goal is that this becomes the ground truth of carbon emissions, and it becomes a public good for everyone to use.
I want to ask about profitability. Do you feel that there's some in the travel industry that they, even though the planet is essentially our product in this industry, there are many that think, I just can't do X, Y, and Z because it's too expensive. I can't make a profit. I've still got to, I've got to stay in business. I'm curious to get your reaction, Christian, on that type of sentiment, because it is something that,
Well, it certainly is an issue for certain companies at certain levels again. I think generally speaking, and in the medium and long-term run, this question will go away, and it will depend on how you can approach it, right? If you're at the beginning of the journey, sustainability can be implemented fairly straightforward and without any big adjustments because you're starting from a low base or from zero eventually. If you're further in the journey as a company, and depending how global you are, of course, it can become a bigger impact in terms of capital spent. However, I think the one mistake one shouldn't make or mustn't make is wanting to change everything in a short period of time. I think the key to success will be and is to go in steps, but go in steps. Don't just stop and don't continue to find excuses. Because at the end of the day, it's our belief, it's my belief that we will reach a point where you will not be able to do business unless you have your ESG strategy in place. That is, as far as I'm concerned, inevitable, and you will have to get there. It's just the road of how you want to approach it and how your financials allow you to do it. As I said, for us, it was never a financial model, but we have just started 7 years ago, so it was a bit easier.
Gotcha. What is your feeling on the role of government in ESG? I feel like, I mean, this is just my personal thought that a lot of times, you know, the consumer, it's really put on the consumer, you know, recycle and do this and do that, where governments, you know, in order to make the big sweeping changes that we need, it's really governments that need to step in, and it's really a policy issue. How do you feel that governments, like, what are they doing right? What are they not doing right? How can they help you as businesses enact some of these things?
Well, I'm going to jump on what you just said about new businesses having this job easier in a way. I think it's the same. The same applies to new destination, and I've seen new destination taking opportunity of the fact that they're new to really build their tourism products on sustainability foundations. Bosnia is a very good example of that. We've started operating this country very recently. It's just came back on the map after the war and everything, but everything they're building, the intention at least is to build it on very strong sustainability foundations, community tourism, local people, supporting the most remote areas to create their own activities and accommodations options, and that's what really is going to work in the future. Now, it is very complicated for governments and countries that are much more mature, that have been in business for so long, that base their product on the fly and flop, for example, or different style of holidays or travels. But it needs to start somewhere because it will be driven by customer, and it will also be, in a way, forced by governments. We're seeing Europe, and I think Air France KLM talked a lot about the European regulations is very, very, very difficult. And it's going to be more and more difficult. Advertisement is going to be more difficult. The ASA in the UK is already more difficult. So I think the shift needs to happen no matter what. Yes, it's easier for new businesses or new destinations, but it needs to happen anyway because it will be driven by consumer as well as regulations.
Yesterday, it just so happened that when we were talking in the green room, my daughter sent a little video that she was doing for school, and it was entitled "There Are Flowers in Antarctica," and it was for a little news brief she was doing, and it was talking about how, you know, it is bad that there are flowers in Antarctica because it's too warm, and then the ice will melt, and it will flood everywhere, including places like New York City. That's where we live. And she's 9, and it really, you know, we're doing all of this really for her and her generation. And I'm curious when all of you talk to young people, whether it's, you know, maybe new hires, people that you work with, the people in the community, like people that you meet when you go on trips, if you are optimistic about kind of how they think about sustainability and what changes they are going to enact as they come of age and, you know, inherit this earth.
Well, to my previous point, they will drive the shift because they need a planet to live in. So we, as an industry, have to be able to cater to their needs. And obviously, you've said it before, we're talking about a much bigger problem than just our industry. It's the planet that we're talking about. And indeed, we don't have a product in the travel industry if the planet is not healthy. And we're already seeing the consequences of climate change, as I mentioned, operationally. So we really have to make that shift for all the good reasons, whether it's regulations, whether it's the values and the business. And to go back to your question to Christian, purpose and profit for us is the core to our business. The more we invested in purpose, the more we've grown, and we've grown the profit. And as a business that came out of a pandemic, we just closed our biggest month of sales ever. And we've been named one of the 100 most influential company by Time, which was a shock for us. We never really realized we could be, you know, in the same list than Airbnb or Disney. And that's, to me, a very, very strong sign that if you do the right thing, you will be recognized for it and you will grow sustainably. And that shift needs to happen. We've been here for 34 years, so we're not new either, but it is possible.
Do you see changes from the generation coming up?
I do. I mean, I've got 2 kids, and I know that they also want to, they want to be traveling the world in a good way. And so I'm taking them to Vietnam next week, and hopefully they'll get a good immersive experience there, and will want to travel the same way in the future. I've got to educate them.
David?
I was thinking of like, two answers, or one more personal, one more from the business. I think there are a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I was mentioning before that all the younger generations in the surveys, they have this strong interest, and they act on it much more. So it's true that the older generations, we need to do a behavioral change, but we see it happening slowly, but it's happening. And there is a lot of reasons, because for the younger generations, like it's a no-brainer. And then from a more personal, when I talk to my kids, there are many things that for them are embedded. There's no question on recycling. There is no question on shifting off the lights. There is no question on many things that I remember my parents switch off the lights, do this and that. That is not there anymore. So I think there are many, many reasons to be optimistic.
Yeah, obviously you see big changes. The demands are different from Generation X, Generation Z, and rightly so. But I think that also drives us faster in making the changes and making more bespoke offerings versus just cookie cutting across the globe. So one of the success stories for all of us will be to be within the community, to engage with them, to stop shipping food, for example, in our industry from A to Z, and do more farm to tables, and give the customer the more local experience, which can be luxury at the end of the day, right? And should be luxury. So it's all about this engaging and driving forward and being more conscious in what you're doing. And in hospitality, food will be a big and will make a big impact, and beverage for that matter. And there's nothing nicer than having a local experience which you've never had in your life before. Because Chablis from X, Y, and Z you can get everywhere in the world, and maybe you had this 5 times in your life already.
Excellent. Well, let's end on the optimistic note. David, Zina, Christian, thank you so much.
Thank you.